is Nova, and today I'll be reading Chapter 1 of Witchlings by Claribel A. Ortega. This is my first time reading for an audience, so I hope you enjoy. Now let's get into the book. In the darkness of the woods, listen well. Every little noise you hear might be the thing that dwells. Crunching leaves, a subtle breeze, or a monster as it grieves. Now, the monster is hunting you. It's too late. We've let him loose. Lock the windows, shut the lights, wrap your little ones up tight, hang the roof and heed the bell. Beware, thing that dwells. The Ballad of the Night Beast, from the 12 Towns book of folk song. Chapter 1. Anything but a spare. It was the night of the Black Moon ceremony, and the very last thing Seven Salazar wanted was to be a spare witch. Now that she was 12, she'd be placed in her coven. But like every ceremony before, tonight 3 witches would be left over. Spares. Nobody ever wanted to be a spare. Seven had done everything she could think of. Studied for her CAT exams, attended every witching social event she could fit on her calendar. She'd even joined the toad racing team and got stuck with the slowest, crankiest toad of the lot. At least his name, Edgar Allan Toad, sort of made up for it. But only sort of. It wasn't like Seven had to do all those things either. Everyone in her year got to participate in the Black Moon ceremony, of course, but it was a long-standing belief among witchlings that the harder you studied and worked, the more likely you were to get into one of the cool covens. Seven tied her combat boots and slipped on her oversized purple hoodie before securing her pointy hat on her curly hair with some pins. They'd give her a giant black ceremony robe when she got to the town square, but it was thin, and the night was cold. She didn't want to freeze her buns off. She shot a quick text to her best friend, Poppy, telling her how excited she was for tonight. Duh, Poppy wrote back. And me too! Can't wait to be coven sisters! Seven smiled at the message as she walked into the kitchen where her mother Fox was putting the celebration cake in the fridge to cool. Seb, you've got your amulet, right? Fox wiped her slender fingers on her apron and let down her curly red hair. It's only the whole point of tonight, Mom. Seven said, holding up the amulet that hung around her neck. Later that night it would light up with the same color as the other witches in her coven. Please, let it turn purple. The color of House Hyacinth, the coven Seven and Poppy had dreamed of being placed into for, just about all their lives. Remember, things will work out okay, no matter what happens tonight, Fox said. Easy for you to say, grumbled Seven, looking at the bright aquamarine pendant that hung from the necklace Fox always wore. The blue stone signified House of Stars, one of the most popular covens. Seven would have a much better chance of achieving her biggest dream, becoming a witching world famous journalist, if she was in one of the powerful covens, like Mom. It was pretty much the opposite being a spare. Being a spare meant your destiny and magic didn't match up with anyone else's. Being a spare meant you didn't belong. And Seven wanted desperately to belong. As Fox moved around the kitchen, the moonlight hit her pendant, and it seemed to adorn everything around her with shimmering stars. Seven used to wonder if her mother had gotten her name because of her red hair, which she always thought looked lovely with her deep brown skin and freckled face. Seven looked more like her dad, tawny brown skin and dark curls. But now she knew it was more likely that her mother had been named Fox because of how cunning she was. In their world, the 12 Towns, a child's name was a prophecy passed down from a grandmother, or the town grand, their leader. Seven had no idea what her name meant. Not yet, anyway. But like any name given in Ravenskill, one day, the meaning would be discovered. It was just a matter of time. Seven began to tap drum beats on the closest object, trying to match the beat of her fluttering heart. "Are you still nervous about being a spare?" Seven's father, Talus, asked, strolling into the room. He was carrying her baby brother for Sherry, who everyone affectionately called Beefy, both because of his roundness and his unusual strength. He was also unusually tall for his age, already 3 toadstools long, and Seven had only been 2 when she was a baby. Beefy pulled on his father's ear, and Talus cringed. The baby's grip could be painful. Seven rubbed her scalp, wore flashbacks of Beefy pulling on her curly hair coming back to her. "I'm not just nervous, Dad. I'm freaking out. What if I didn't do enough? Or what if the magic gets punched somehow? Or..." Seven's voice dropped to an ominous whisper. "I get placed with Valley. Valley Peppermore, the literal worst. Valley had been bullying Seven for as long as she could remember, putting weird things in her rucksack, hiding Edgar Allan Poe before a race, or giving dirty looks to Seven and Poppy. She was mean, scary, and came from one of the families on the hill. They were the wealthiest witches in town, and thought they ran everything. Well, they sort of did run everything, actually. The only witches they couldn't go up against were the town gran and uncle. The chances of that happening are not very high, but even if it does, any witch can be a friend if you just give them a chance," her mother said. Seven held back a snort. She was almost positive Valley was a cacao, or at the very least part gremlin. Her parents didn't see the way Valley snapped at their professors, and didn't seem to care about her schoolwork, or how she was always on her own doing sneaky, probably terrible things. Sometimes, when someone thought about it, when she thought what her life would be like without Poppy and without her family, she felt almost sad for Valley, who had no friends, and the scariest parents ever. But then Valley would do another awful thing, and Seven wouldn't feel so bad anymore. None of that would matter after tonight anyway, Seven reminded herself, because once she and Poppy were placed in House Hyacinth, she wouldn't have to deal with Valley ever again. In the past Ravensgullian Black Moon ceremonies she researched in preparation, not one showed the example of best friends sorted into different covens. Torden Whisperbrew, the famous, coolest reporter of all time, and Seven's idol, was sorted into House Hyacinth, right alongside their best friend, and now owner of the Squawking Crow newspaper, Inkpin Killian. They were a dynamic duo, and Seven was looking forward to her and Poppy following in their footsteps. "Come on then, it's almost midnight. The Gran will hex us if we're late," Talus grunted, as he placed Beefy in his stroller. The baby swung his legs and cooed happily as he was strapped in. When he was done, Talus kneeled down in front of Seven. "A hug for good luck?" Talus asked, and Seven smiled as her dad pulled her into a warm embrace. Talus, short for talisman, had always been lucky. Seven pitched his cheeks before a test for an extra boost. A bright blue pendant hung from his neck, the same color as her mother's. That's how her parents had met, after all. They were placed in the same coven as kids. "No matter what happens tonight, we're all proud of you," Talus said. Seven scrunched her face at him. "Even Beefy?" Talus laughed. "Especially Beefy. He has no idea what's going on, but he's still proud of you, too. Let's go." The town square was across the cemetery, under a bridge, and past the Bruised Apple bookstore, which had recently been taken over by a new family in town. A shadow dashed across the night, and Seven jumped, clutching her mother's arm. "It was only a rabbit," Fox said softly. Seven laughed nervously. "I knew that." She did not know that. There had been sightings lately, sightings of a monster called the Night Beast, a giant wolf that ate witchlings, or at least that was the rumor at Seven's school. Her teachers had assured them those were all rumors. But she had noticed older witches around town had begun enchanting their gates with stay-away spells, hanging roofs from their trellises and above their doors, and panic on the Raven Skull message board. All signs that a creature lurked near. Seven had walked this way to town thousands of times, many on her own. Tonight she was grateful to have her family with her on the cold, dark path, even if it had only been a rabbit. The Salazars arrived just as the other families were gathering around the cascading fountain at the center of town. Lanterns hung from the trees around the square in groups of 5 to symbolize the incoming covenants. The light cast a warm orange glow on everything it touched, and left a few corners cloaked in shadow. Poppy and her mother were there. They waved at Seven as she took her place in the circle around the fountain, and Seven felt a surge of happiness. Her oldest friend ran over to her, and it seemed everyone's eyes followed her. Poppy had always been the more popular of the two of them, cheerful and optimistic to Seven's anxious determination. But they had always gotten along. Seven, I didn't sleep at all, not a wink, Poppy said breathlessly. Me either. I feel like my eyes are going to explode, Seven said. Poppy laughed. Cake at my place after? Said Seven. Pineapple? Poppy raised an eyebrow. Of course, Seven said, and smiled. Pineapple jam cake was her favorite, and her family recipe was famous. The crowd began to shuffle uneasily. It was almost time. No matter what, Poppy said hurriedly, we stay friends, no matter what coven we're in, deal? She held her pinky out for their best friends square. Deal. Seven linked her pinky with Poppy's, and they swung their arms to and fro 3 times. The pair of witchlings dove into laughter, the excitement of the ceremony too much to contain. They hugged, and Poppy ran back to her parents. The town uncle, second in command to the Grand, walked around, handing each witchling a long black robe. He was the most powerful witch in Ravenskill, after the Grand. Town Grands got their powers from the stars, while town uncles got their powers from nature, and could even speak to animals. The uncle was charged not only with being the Grand's right hand in everything she did, but also in being the legion for all the caretaker of all the animals in Ravenskill. An immensely important job indeed. He wore the ceremonial special occasion robe of Doubtful, adorned with trees and various animals enchanted to scuttle about the fabric. And, of course, the blue bird brooch he received when he became uncle. Here you go. 7 Salazar, correct? Uncle asked when he reached 7. Yep. 7 took the folded black robe as the uncle crouched down to coo at Beefy. Oh my! Look at his fat little feet, the uncle said sweetly. Just then Beefy grabbed the uncle's fuzzy green hat and began to chew on it. So sorry, said 7, pulling the hat, not without a struggle from Beefy's throat, and handing it back to the uncle. The uncle just laughed and moved on to the next witchling. Talus and Fox retreated to the outer circle with Beefy in tow, giving 7 an encouraging smile and snapping pictures as they joined the other parents. The ceremony was about to begin. Seven slipped into her robe, taking a deep breath, and softly chanting, "Not a spare, not a spare, not a spare," as if it were a life-saving spell. "Sorry." Someone bumped into Seven from behind and nearly knocked her into the fountain, which was now lit up with a deep green glow. "Careful," Seven said, straightening up to face the girl who bumped her. It was someone she'd never seen before. "The Gran is watching us." The Gran had arrived and was standing on a floating platform at the center of the fountain, water splashing just below her feet. Though it was dark and foggy, she seemed to eye each of them carefully, and Seven swore she could see inside her brain. Like most everyone else, the Gran was dressed in all black, but the fabric of the Gran's long black cloak was enchanted to look like the night sky. She was famous for her cloak, which held magic objects and changed colors like the night sky. The most bright of the visions was the stars and moon swirling around each other in a glittering sky. In ode to the Gran's real name, Nox, an ancient word that meant night. From under her pointy hat fell a cascade of gray braids she always had done in the colder months, her tight curls loose and flowing whenever it was warm out. "I'm Thorn," said the girl next to Seven. Seven gave her the side eye, taking in the straight, short, black hair and bangs, her round, pale face, and flush-red lips. She was much shorter than Seven, practically in every way. Even her feet were small. Her shoes looked like they were less than half a toe long. Despite the darkness, she could see her eyes were a deep, dark blue. They were like tiny pins, like the kind seamstress used to hold fabric in place. Stitched to her hat. It was interesting her name was Thorn, since she sort of looked like a rose, and was also being a real pain in the butt. "You must be the new girl," Seven said. Thorn nodded so quickly her witch's hat almost flew off. "I'm pretty nervous," she said. Seven sighed. "Seven Salazar, hi. I think we might be starting soon." Right, Thorn said, and mocked her lips, throwing away the key. A few moments passed in silence. "Nice to meet you, by the way. Which coven are you hoping to be placed in?" whispered Thorn, almost immediately forgetting her locked mouth. Magnificently, the Gran rose her arm, and the crowd went silent, saving Seven from having to fib and say whatever she got would be a blessing. From the moment they began their magical training, they were told, and told again and again, their coven was their destiny, and being ungrateful for fate's gift could curse them with bad luck, or even worse than bad luck. If you truly didn't accept your given house, then you couldn't be sealed with your coven during the ceremony. They'd stay witchlings. But that hadn't happened in many years. Tonight marks the 200th and 50th Black Moon ceremony in the town of Ravensville. The Grant began to say. Everyone clapped, politely. Across from Seven's line of vision, stood Valley's parents. They wore expensive-looking coats with sharp lines and leather gloves. They stood rigid, looking in Valley's direction intensely. After each one of the Grant's proclamations, while everyone else cheered loudly, they barely clapped, as if it was the most boring event in the world. Valley looked miserable. Then again, she always did. She stood opposite Seven in the circle of witchlings, scowling. Her hair was tucked behind her ear, and her hat was sitting horizontally on her head. "I'm so nervous," whispered Thorn again. Seven had to force herself not to move away. Instead, through clenched teeth, she warned, "Stop talking, or I'll hex you, or I'm going to hex you to be my toad's wife." That shut her up, at least for now. "And now," exclaimed the Grant, "the reason we're all gathered here tonight, the forming of cousins. Where before there were low murmurs of noise throughout the square, now it was deadly quiet. Witchlings, prepare your amulets." With a collective rumble of fabric, the 28 witchlings pulled out their crystal amulets, which hung from the black cord around their necks, and held them in front of their faces. Now intone the spell with me." All at once, voices rose, reciting the Black Moon song. They'd known all their lives, but were not allowed to sing aloud till this night. Seven's heart fluttered as she began. "A coven is 5, in death and in life, to believe, to protect, never doubt or neglect. Bound by our magic before the Black Moon, bound by a circle, for no circle spell doom." As the final words left their mouth, purple smoke seeped from their lips. Purple smoke seeped from their mouths and danced to the center of the circle, right above the Grant's hand. Then, with a flick of her wand, she sent the smoke hurtling back and straight into the amulet, which began to swirl fire and vibrate. Seven's amulet began to spun wildly, and she closed her eyes, begging one final time for the thing she begged whenever she thought of tonight. "Please let it turn purple." All around her, covens began to form. 5 amulets turned the bright aqua color of her parents' coven. "House of Stars," the Grant said. "Bright, beautiful, generous to all." The witchlings squealed and ran off together, holding hands in their circle. They would be a new wing of the 5 witch coven, part of the larger Grand House of Stars now. Another group got the deep black color of obsidian, for Moth House. Mysterious, morbid, dependable friends, intoned the Grand, to encourage cheers from the crowd, including a group of parents who looked like they died last week. moth house was the creepiest coven. Their black lipstick and pale makeup was pretty cool, Seven could admit. She was a bit surprised that Valley hadn't been sorted into moth house, but it was probably the dependable friend's part. Witchlings embraced and joined their new coven happily. And all the while, Seven waited, eyeing Poppy anxiously. Next, the Witchlings for the emerald-colored frog house. Focused, frugal, truthful to the least. Replaced. And now, there were only 2 covens left before the spares. There would be 3 spares tonight. Seven knew Valley being a spare would make sense, since she was always falling behind in all her classes and had 0 friends. There were a few kids in her class, ones that never fit in, who Seven could see being sorted into the spare coven. A girl named Starlight woohooed when her amulet began to glow purple. This is it, thought Seven. House Hyacinth. Her house. Next, a boy named Kane, which Seven knew was short for Hurricane. And Seven and Poppy looked at each other. And Seven held back a giggle, excited for her amulet to go purple. For their amulets to go purple. A girl she recognized from her class, one who always ignored her, and whose name she couldn't remember, was chosen. And then her best friend was too. Seven's heart gave an awful lunge, as the 2 friends looked at each other with delight. There was only 1 spot left. She glanced down at her own doll amulet, then over at her best friend. Poppy's amulet was a vibrant purple. Poppy's face dropped as she looked at Seven. All their plans of being coven sisters unraveling. So she quickly corrected herself, giving Seven a little smile, a light smile, and turning away to join her new coven. Seven knew that Poppy couldn't betray her silently. Even with one misgiving about what coven you were in, you were placed in, could spell disaster, could prevent your coven from closing. That didn't make it hurt any less. House Hyacinth, said the Grand. Valiant, virtuous, powerful in all things. House Hyacinth got the loudest cheers yet, and the awful truth sunk in. No, this couldn't be happening. Seven was supposed to be with Poppy. That's how they always planned it. Best friends were supposed to be placed together. So why weren't they? Okay, Seven breathed. At least there was one other coven left. Seven would be in Goose House coven. Seven focused, taking a deep, calming breath, trying not to fidget. As a beautiful pearl color filled one amulet, then another. A 4th witch entered. 4th witchling entered the Goose House coven. There was only one more amulet to go. Seven held her breath. But when that last amulet shimmered white, it wasn't hers. Goose House, said the Grand. Clever, chaotic, mostly good. The happy squeal of the other covens turned into whispers and sighs of relief. Seven thought with a cringe. They were all happy. Happy not to be her. Shame washed over Seven, and she was glad for the cover of the night sky. night sky. No one would see how pink her face was turning when she was embarrassed. How pink her face turned when she was embarrassed. Seven's amulet filled with the muddy red color of spare coming. And she shut her eyes tight, wishing that she could just disappear. Her stomach felt sour, like she had eaten something rotten. But at least she was keeping her tears at bay. Seven's eyes flew open as she realized she was too caught up in her own panic to notice who was left with her, who shared the shame of being left for last. She followed the red glow from her amulet to the one right next to her, to Thorn. Panicked, she scanned the circle until she spotted the unmistakable red glow coming from Valley Pepperhorn's amulet stone shone a bright red, and a happy sneer crossed her face. No, not Valley. Anyone but Valley. Even her toad would be better than Valley. But this was her awful reality. Just 3 witches and a red glow all around them, and the unmistakable truth that Seven was a spare. I hope you enjoyed chapter 1 of Witchlings. Again, this is my first time reading to an audience, so I hope you enjoyed. That's all for today. Thank you. Nova signing.